You've been lied to about Greenland your entire life. Right now, if you close your eyes and picture a world map, Greenland probably looks absolutely massive, maybe even larger than Africa or South America. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Greenland is actually 14 times smaller than Africa. 14 times. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at a map the same way again. Because what you're about to discover goes way beyond just bad cartography. This is about power, politics, and a distortion so old that it shaped how billions of people see the world. So why does Greenland look so insanely huge on almost every map you've ever seen? The answer starts with a Belgian guy in 1538 who created a problem we still haven't fixed. His name was Gerardus Mercator, and he invented the Mercator projection, which is basically the default world map you see in classrooms, on Google Maps, and pretty much everywhere else. Now, Mercator wasn't trying to trick anyone. He was trying to solve a navigation problem for sailors. Ships needed straight lines on maps to match compass directions in real life. The Mercator projection delivered that perfectly. Sailors loved it. But there was a cost, and that cost was the truth. Here's how the distortion works. And this is where it gets wild. The Earth is a sphere, right? But maps are flat. To turn a sphere into a rectangle, you have to stretch things. The Mercator projection stretches land masses the farther they are from the equator. So countries near the poles get absolutely blown up in size, while countries near the equator stay relatively accurate. Greenland sits way up north, just 600 miles from the North Pole. So on a Mercator map, it gets stretched into this monstrous landmass. Meanwhile, Africa sits right on the equator, so it barely gets distorted at all. In reality, Africa is over 30 million square kilometers. Greenland, just 2.1 million. You could fit Greenland inside Africa 14 times and still have room left over. But on a Mercator map, they look almost the same size. It's genuinely insane when you think about how many people have no idea. And here's the part people miss. This isn't just a fun cartography fact. This distortion has shaped global perception for centuries. When you grow up seeing Greenland as this enormous frozen empire and Africa as something smaller and less significant, it warps your understanding of geopolitics, resources, and power. Some historians argue that the Mercator projection reinforced colonial attitudes, making European nations appear larger and more central while minimizing the global south. Whether Mercator intended that or not, the impact was real. Maps don't just show the world, they shape how we see it. But wait, because it gets even weirder. Greenland doesn't just look big, it looks important. And in some ways, that perception is starting to become reality, which is the plot twist nobody saw coming. For most of history, Greenland was just this frozen Danish territory that nobody really cared about. It was cold, remote, and strategically irrelevant. But in the past 20 years, everything changed. Climate change started melting Greenland's ice sheet, which covers about 80% of the island. And underneath that ice, some of the largest untapped reserves of rare earth minerals on the planet. We're talking about elements essential for smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and military technology. Suddenly, Greenland went from a geopolitical afterthought to one of the most contested territories on Earth. China noticed first. Over the past decade, Chinese companies have been investing heavily in Greenland, funding mining projects and infrastructure. They even tried to buy an old naval base. The United States freaked out. In 2019, President Donald Trump reportedly offered to buy Greenland from Denmark for billions of dollars. Denmark said no, obviously, because you can't just buy a country in the 21st century. But the offer revealed something crucial. Greenland matters now in ways it never did before. And that scramble for control is only getting more intense as the ice keeps melting and new shipping routes open up across the Arctic. Let me paint a picture of what's actually happening on the ground in Greenland right now, because this is where reality becomes almost cinematic. The island has a population of only 56,000 people. 56,000. That's less than a small city. Most of them live in tiny coastal towns, scattered along the fjords, with no roads connecting them. If you want to travel between towns, you take a boat or a helicopter. The capital, Nuuk, has around 19,000 people. It's stunningly beautiful, with colorful houses clinging to rocky hillsides and icebergs floating past in the harbor. But it's also dealing with serious issues: high suicide rates, alcoholism, unemployment, and a housing crisis. Meanwhile, international corporations and foreign governments are eyeing the land beneath their feet like it's the last frontier. Here's where the myth versus reality part comes in, because most people think Greenland is just ice and polar bears. Wrong. First, there are no polar bears in most of Greenland. They live in the far north, and locals rarely see them. Second, Greenland has forests. Yes, forests. In the south, there are birch and willow trees, and archaeologists have found evidence that Vikings grew crops there 1,000 years ago during a warm period. The Viking settlement collapsed when temperatures dropped, but the point is, Greenland isn't just an ice cube. It has ecosystems, history, and people with a complex culture that blends Inuit traditions with Danish influence. And speaking of Vikings, let's talk about the name itself, because this is one of history's greatest marketing scams. Around the year 982, a Norse explorer named Eric the Red was exiled from Iceland for murder. He sailed west and found this massive island covered mostly in ice. But when he returned to Iceland to recruit settlers, he called it Greenland. Why? To make it sound appealing. It was literally false advertising 1,000 years ago. He knew people wouldn't move to a place called Iceland 2 or Frozen Death Island, so he went with Greenland. And it worked. People moved there, established settlements, and survived for about 500 years before climate change and other factors wiped them out. But the name stuck, and even today, it's still misleading people about what the place actually looks like. Now, let's get into why this matters on a global scale, because this is where the stakes go through the roof. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. Greenland's ice sheet is losing around 280 billion tons of ice every single year. If the entire ice sheet melted, global sea levels would rise by about 7 meters. That would submerge entire coastal cities. Miami, Shanghai, Amsterdam, Lagos. Gone. Obviously, that's not happening overnight, but the fact that it's even possible puts Greenland at the center of the climate crisis conversation. But here's the uncomfortable truth. While climate change is a catastrophe for the planet, it's opening up opportunities in Greenland that some people are eager to exploit. As the ice melts, new shipping lanes are appearing. The Northwest Passage, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Arctic, is becoming navigable for longer periods each year. This route could cut shipping times between Europe and Asia by thousands of miles compared to going through the Suez Canal. Whoever controls these routes controls a massive economic advantage. That's why Russia, China, and the United States are all positioning themselves in the Arctic. It's a cold war, but this time, it's literally cold. And then there's the military angle, which most people don't even realize exists. The United States has had a military presence in Greenland since World War II. Thule Air Base, located in the northwest, is one of the most remote and strategically important American military installations on Earth. It's home to early warning radar systems that detect incoming missiles from over the North Pole. During the Cold War, Thule was essential for monitoring Soviet activity. Today, it's still crucial for defense against potential threats from Russia and for tracking space debris and satellites. The base is so isolated that supplies are flown in, and personnel often describe it as one of the toughest deployments in the military. But here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. In 1968, a United States B-52 bomber carrying 4 nuclear weapons crashed near Thule. The bombs didn't detonate, but they spread radioactive plutonium across the ice. The cleanup operation, called Project Crested Ice, recovered most of the material, but reports suggest that one of the bombs was never found and is still sitting somewhere under the ice. Denmark and Greenland were furious, but the incident was mostly covered up for years. It's a reminder that Greenland has been a geopolitical pawn for decades, caught between larger powers with bigger agendas. Let's zoom back to the people actually living there, because their voices matter most in this story. Greenlanders are increasingly frustrated with their status. Greenland is technically an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. Denmark provides a massive annual subsidy of around $600 million, which makes up a huge chunk of Greenland's budget. But many Greenlanders want full independence. They want control over their resources, their future, and their identity. The problem is economic. Without Denmark's money, and without major mining operations online yet, full independence would be financially devastating. It's a catch-22. They need economic development to break free, but that development often comes from foreign companies that don't necessarily have Greenland's best interests at heart. And here's where the conversation gets really complicated. Large-scale mining could bring jobs, wealth, and independence, but it also threatens the environment and traditional ways of life. Inuit communities have lived in Greenland for over 4,000 years, hunting, fishing, and surviving in one of the harshest climates on Earth. Industrial mining operations could disrupt ecosystems, contaminate water sources, and destroy landscapes that have spiritual and cultural significance. So Greenlanders are stuck weighing modern economic survival against preserving their heritage and environment. It's not a simple choice, and outsiders don't get to make it for them. Meanwhile, the ice keeps melting, and the world keeps watching. Scientists are drilling ice cores in Greenland to study climate history going back hundreds of thousands of years. These cores reveal atmospheric conditions from ancient eras and help predict future climate scenarios. What they're finding is alarming. The current rate of melting is unprecedented in recent history. Some models suggest that even if we stopped all carbon emissions tomorrow, Greenland's ice sheet might already be past a tipping point. The feedback loop has begun. Less ice means less reflected sunlight, which means more heat absorption, which means more melting. It's accelerating. But let's come back to maps, because this is where everything connects. The reason Greenland looks massive isn't just a quirky cartography error. It's a symbol of how we've misunderstood and underestimated an entire region for centuries. The Mercator projection made Greenland look huge, but irrelevant. A big, empty, frozen blob at the top of the map. In reality, Greenland is small but increasingly critical. It holds keys to climate science, rare resources, Arctic shipping routes, and military strategy. The map lied about its size, but it also hid its importance. And here's the final twist. Other map projections exist that show the world more accurately. The Gall-Peters projection maintains accurate land area, so Africa looks appropriately massive, and Greenland looks small. The Winkel triple projection balances size and shape better than Mercator. The orthograph projection minimizes distortion across the entire globe. So why do we still use Mercator? Habit, mostly. And because Google Maps uses a version of it, so billions of people interact with that distorted view every single day. We have the tools to show the world accurately, but we choose not to. That decision has consequences. So here's what you need to take away from all of this. Greenland looks huge on maps because of a centuries-old navigational tool that was never meant to show true size. That distortion shaped how generations viewed the world, making some places seem more important, and others less so. But the real Greenland, the actual island, is small in size but exploding in significance. It's ground zero for climate change, a prize in the new Arctic scramble, and home to a population trying to navigate independence, identity, and survival in a rapidly changing world. The maps lied, but the truth is so much more complex and fascinating than a flat piece of paper could ever show. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how maps shape our reality, and why Greenland matters way more than most people realize, consider subscribing. We break down the hidden stories behind geography, history, and the forces shaping our world. And here's a question for the comments. Do you think Greenland will eventually become fully independent? Or will larger powers keep controlling its future? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button if this changed how you see maps, and check the description for links to more videos exploring the weird truths behind everyday things we take for granted. Thanks for watching, and remember, the world is never quite what it seems on paper.